Hey guys, Bobby and I today are going to be doing a collaborative mock draft. It's going to be a 2QB point 0.5 premium superflex 12 team format. Uh, Definitely going to be some disagreement. Bobby and I, fun fact, have not discussed our rankings post draft with each other. So I think this is going to be a little bit more interesting than some of our pre draft mocks were for us.
Yeah, we've definitely, since we were watching film, right, we had a lot of agreement on a lot of the players, but we definitely had our initial thoughts on the draft live stream, which was incredible. But since then, all the landing spots have kind of sifted themselves in and just kind of situated themselves, and now we may have some different opinions on players. So I'm going to let you go ahead and straight up have this 101. I'm sure you'll surprise everybody with it, though.
Yeah, to everybody's surprise, we are going to, in fact, go with Ashton Genty. So, being selected in the upper half of the first round, he has the elite draft capital, the likes of Saquon Barkley, Jameer Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and the like. He has the build that we like with over 30.0 BMI. He's had a ton of work, but he's shown that he can withstand that and hasn't had a ton of injury issues. He lands with the Raiders, where he's by far and away the most talented back. He has the elite draft capital. They have a quarterback upgrade in Geno Smith. They have Jack Besh, who we both really like at wide receiver, along with Jacoby Myers and obviously Brock Bowers. I think that it should be an improved offense drastically from what we saw with the Raiders this past season. And I think he's obviously the clear cut running back one, just kind of like Bijan Robinson was back in the day in 2023.
Yeah, and the PFF grades in terms of run blocking for the Raiders offensive line unit weren't great, but I think also that has something to do with how poor their running back room was last year. That probably has some sort of weight on that PFF grade. And taking a guy top 6 in the NFL draft like Genty was, he's going to be the focal point in that offense. So great pick. I don't think he should go any later than the 101 unless your league has specific settings that like greatly reduce running back points. So at the 102, this one's where things get a little fishy, right? You could have Omarion Hampton. You could have, Cam Ward could go here even. But for me, it's got to be Travis Hunter for me. I know he's got some questions about like how much is he going to play offense. I watched him at Jags rookie minicamp. He looks fantastic. Love some of the routes he was showing off. I think he's the most talented football player in terms of the skill positions here. Yeah, he goes to the Jaguars where, he's not really going to be the number one there just because, BTJ is there and he's the dominant vertical X there. But I think Travis Hunter can play in the slot. He can play out wide at the Z position as well. You can kind of move him around wherever you see fit. And I think Travis Hunter, if they play him enough on offense, which I think they will, he's going to be a very, very solid fantasy player for you next year. Think like T. Higgins, but with more yak upside.
Yeah, and with Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, they both, in my opinion, have true positional versatility. They can play the slot, the Z, or the X. We've already seen in a Liam Cohen offense as soon as this past season that both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans could both feast and be potential wide receiver ones for us in fantasy. Now, that may not hold true in terms of the immediate year one results, but the long-term upside of having an offensive-minded, creative play-calling head coach is really as good as it gets. Trevor Lawrence has always been an underrated quarterback. Is he elite? Potentially not, but he's definitely more than serviceable enough to get this done. And Travis Hunter, as good as he already is, has never been focusing purely as a wide receiver. His route running, he could reduce some wasted movement, and that's scary because he's already this good.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you're on the clock at the 103. Who do you go with here? I think I have a sneaky suspicion on who you're going with here.
If you chose Omarion Hampton, you would be correct.
Really? Okay. So we're going to go Omarion Hampton here at the 103. Yeah, I like that pick overall. What do you think about that?
So it was a debate between him and Trevion Henderson. With Hampton, though, he does get the first round insulation in terms of the draft capital. Now, he goes more so in the area that we've seen players like Travis Etienne, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Najee Harris go in. But I also think he's a much better prospect than any of them are. In the short term, it is a little bit murky with Najee Harris there, but I do think that he's immediately going to be in a split. And I think by the end of the season, and especially next season, he is going to be the running back one definitively. It's a Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman offense. They like their power running game. They're going to be scoring tons of points. And I think that just one of the safest bets for us in fantasy in terms of the hit rate, as well as this fantastic situation, is a first round running back. And I comped him to Josh Jacobs. So imagine basically Josh Jacobs in a Greg Roman, Justin Herbert led offense. Lots of points.
Yep, I definitely agree with you on this one. I probably would have taken Henderson just because I would like my short-term upside a little bit more. I do think Najee is going to be very annoying until about mid-season. So, and I don't think the talent's super far off in terms of Hampton and Henderson. I think Henderson's got much more upside. But like you said, once Najee Harris is out of that offense, I mean, he's going to be a top 10 consistently high floor running back every single week in that offense. And he's shown that he can hold up under, a lot of touches. So definitely like that pick there for you. Absolutely. So for me, option to go back-to-back wide receiver is definitely tempting here. I think I got to pick my third overall player here in Travion Henderson, though, just because the upside, I mean, he led college football last year in yards per carry while splitting touches. I mean, he had over 1,000 yards in a split carry offense with Quinshon Judkins, who we'll probably be talking about here shortly. Love the agility. I love the burst, the power. He's got everything you want. Slight injury concern. He was injured one of the seasons at Ohio State when he was the workhorse. He had a foot injury, but doesn't look like it slowed him down whatsoever. I mean, he has been cooking this past season. He goes to the Patriots, where the only other guy that I would say threatens him in that backfield is Ramondre Stevenson, a guy who was benched multiple times last year for fumbling issues. I perceive him to be a short yardage to goal line back, and Henderson gets all the high value touches. So think of him as potentially the next Jahmyr Gibbs in the NFL.
Yeah, and he's also the best pass blocking running back in the class, in my opinion, which is going to lead him, besides his amazing receiving ability and his efficiency on the ground, to being a potential 3-down option. Not in the sense of receiving all of the touches, but in that he can't be phased out of a game, which is incredibly important. Now, we also think about the offensive environment. Josh McDaniels, say what you want about him as a head coach, but I do think that he's a more than adequate offensive coordinator. He has Drake May to throw him the ball. And then, the options outside of Kyle Williams and Stephon Diggs are kind of meh, in my opinion. So I think he's going to get a lot of high value touches. But I do think that, having Stevenson there is going to help, because I don't think he's going to receive, Breece Hall level of touches with what we saw from him in his second season, especially, where he's getting 30 carries a game, which is actually good, because I think a lot like Jahmyr Gibbs and Alvin Kamara before he became the lead back in New Orleans, I think he's going to make the most out of his opportunities, and he's going to be kind of like a Jahmyr Gibbs for us in fantasy.
Absolutely. All right, at the 105, I mean, both of our wide receiver twos are just sitting here staring us in the face. Well, who are you going with at the 105?
And he's going to be there no longer. We are going with Tet McMillan, T-Mac.
Beautiful pick.
Now, yes, sir. And so, I wasn't the biggest fan of the landing spot, but it's definitely not bad. Bryce Young is a little bit sketchy, in my opinion. We know that we did see, a quarter of his career, he performed like a much better than above average quarterback. But we've also seen that with Jordan Love. Now, Jordan Love did deal with injuries, but with Bryce Young, you have the limitations of just the size. But with Tet McMillan, he is definitively the number one. I don't think that Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen, JT Sanders, or anyone is going to usurp him hardly in any way, shape, or form. He's incredible with the ball in his hands. He lands in an offensive-minded head coach's receiving core with Dave Canales. Their defense is atrocious, so I do think they're going to be passing the ball early and often. I think he could see quite a bit of volume, and I think he's one of the safest floor options in this draft, albeit with maybe not the ceiling that somebody like with Travis Hunter has.
Yeah, and I perceive him, RIP Jalen Coker. I think he plays a lot in the slot next year, just with Legette being that consistent X that's not really super flexible in terms of where you want to line him up at. I think Thielen can play the Z, and then you have Coker, who's kind of like the odd man out in here. I think Tet McMillan can be a kind of like, not obviously he's not the same player as JSN, but that type of PPR stud that's just getting like 15 targets a game. Like, that could be what Ted McMillan is, and people forget he's really good after the catch and can bring down these contested catches deep down the field. So that's a beautiful pick. Like you said, best floor receiver for sure in this draft. So definitely a solid pick here. So for me, you have a few options here. It's the 0.5 premium. It's a super flex league, right? There's a few names that stick out to me, but for me, I think you got to go Cam Ward here. I don't think Cam Ward can go anywhere past like the 108, even though I'm not super confident in the Tennessee Titans' ability to develop their talent. We've seen that time and time again with Will Levis and Tannehill and everybody else, right, that they've had under center. It just hasn't really worked thus far, and maybe that's just due to them not having a high-end quarterback. And I think Cam Ward can be that high-end quarterback for them, in all honesty. So great arm angles, great improvisational skills. I mean, he can make some throws on film that absolutely blow you away. But then at the same time, he has some of that Will Levis ability where he just scrambles out of the pocket and throws ducks to linebackers. So that's going to need to be cleaned up. I don't love his supporting cast around him either. I was a huge fan of A.O. Manor, who may go in these first 2 rounds. He's kind of like a fringe second-round guy for me. And then Ridley, is older, and the running game's not great. The offensive line's not great. So he's got the draft capital, though, and I think he will be invested in over the next few seasons. So if you want a guy, I view Ward as more of like a stash play and not a guy you don't want to start a lot year one. So if you have a need at QB3 for like bye weeks or something, I think Cam Ward's the perfect bye week quarterback with a potential to become more in the future.
Yeah, as we've discussed ad nauseum, he is the best of Mahomes and the worst of Will Levis. So where he falls in between that spectrum will dictate his career success, in my opinion. Like you said, the landing spot definitely could be better. I think it could be worse, though. I don't think it's the worst spot we've ever seen for a 101. At least they did somewhat try to acquire some talent in the receiving core, even if it was in the 4th round. At the very least, he should have a good run game with Pollard and Spears. So it isn't as if, in my opinion, he's going to have to completely shoulder the load. But like you said, it would have been great, man, if they could have invested, maybe heavily in the offensive line, or at best, with a second to at least 3rd round wide receiver instead of waiting until the 4th. But at this point, a 101 quarterback, he's going to have a long leash. He's by far and away, in my opinion, their best quarterback. And if you need quarterback, you could take him as soon as 102. But I do think that this is a good value here, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, on the clock at 107. What are we doing?
And so this is a really tough one. It's between Quinshon Judkins and Colston Loveland for me. I think I'm going to go with Quinshon Judkins to go with that win now production that we want. So he lands in Cleveland, right? I think he's quite plain as day the Nick Chubb replacement, right? He's physical. He gets what's blocked for him. He's not necessarily the most creative in the sense of getting yardage that isn't blocked for him, but I think he's going to get a good bit of volume. I think he's in a competitive AFC North offense where they need a lot of toughness. They want to salt out games. And he's also very good in the passing game for somebody his size. He has the BMI that we look for with a 30.0 BMI. He really has it all. He has high-end second-round draft capital, being selected 36th overall by the Cleveland Browns. I think that he's going to be used a little bit more than Nick Chubb was in the passing game. But he does have a pesky Dylan Sampson, who's selected in the 4th round, that neither one of us is particularly high on. But I do think he's going to be interspersed here and there. Nonetheless, I think in the middle of the 1st round, Quinshon Judkins possesses a good bit of upside as well as a high floor because he can be your 3-down back. And I do think that Cleveland is going to want to look to run the ball as much as they can to get the ball out of whichever unfortunate soul starts at quarterback for them.
And that's a good point, right? We don't know who's throwing the rock in Cleveland, right? So I think they're going to struggle at quarterback a decent amount, and I think they're going to lean on that run game. Cleveland is a team that has heavily relied on Nick Chubb over the past few seasons before he unfortunately got hurt. I think they're going to go right back to that with Judkins. I think, use the quarterback sparingly because you really don't have a elite tier quarterback, in my opinion, on that roster. And Judkins can come in there and carry the rock 20, 25 times a game and call it a day, give Sampson 6 to 8 touches a game, right? I think Samson's the perfect like change of pace guy, just because I don't find him particularly impressive outside of exploding for big chunk gains if the blocking is great. So yeah, love this for Judkins. I had him as my 6th overall player, so you get a slight value at this spot here at the 107. All right, so for me, a lot of options here. I think for me, it's kind of hard drafting when we're both kind of very similar on our players. I think I'm actually going to go with my tight end 1. I know we didn't love the landing spot, but Loveland, I'm a little more questionable on in terms of landing spot. I'm going with Tyler Warren here at the 108. He was my 7th overall player in the draft. Man, there's just so much to like with Tyler Warren. The size, the weight, the overall versatility that he brings. Yak monster bulldozes people after the catch. He goes to Indianapolis, where QB situation is far from ideal. Daniel Jones is not known for throwing to tight ends. Let it be known he hasn't had many good tight ends throughout his NFL career, and the Giants don't really utilize tight ends. And Anthony Richardson doesn't really prioritize throwing to anyone outside of 70 yards downfield. So definitely a problem at the QB position right now, but you don't spend top 15 draft capital to take a guy that you're not going to utilize. I think Shane Steichen's going to use this guy in a lot of creative ways, similarly to how they used him at Penn State, and he's going to get a lot of work this season. There's nobody in that tight end room to compete with him. And worst case scenario for Tyler Warren, Anthony Richardson bombs and proves that he cannot throw a football, and Daniel Jones sucks like he's sucked before, and they go grab a quarterback top 10 next year. And I think with that, I think Tyler Warren has a great future outlook, similarly to Colston Loveland. But for me, Tyler Warren just has a little bit more upside. That's why I'm picking him here.
Yeah, we've joked before when he was mocked to the Colts and afterwards that he's probably the best quarterback on that team. I think he is going to get a lot of design touches. I think he's going to get some running. It would not shock me if he has multiple rushing touchdowns this season. They could potentially even use him in the Wildcat with A-Rich if they are able to get to the goal line, which will happen for sure. I think he's going to get a good amount of target volume. I do think he is going to be the leading target earner in this offense. I just think the quality of the targets is probably going to be about as bad as it gets, and it's going to be a murky short term, but there is a ton of potential upside because, like you said, either A-Rich or DJ figure it out, or they get a new quarterback. So he'll be fine eventually, even if the short term isn't what we want.
Yeah, and I will add one more thing. That wide receiver room is full of like solid talent wide receivers like Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, who we both love, A.D. Mitchell, who, showed some really good promise on tape, just didn't really get targeted all that well. So they have some guys in that receiving room, but I think Tyler Warren, like you said, is going to get a lot of design touches. So now here at the 109, plenty of guys here. I'm suspecting a running back or tight end here from you.
You would be correct. I'm debating between two players. It's between RJ Harvey and Colston Loveland. I think I'm going to go with Colston Loveland though.
Yeah.
So he lands in Chicago where, yes, like we mentioned, it's very crowded. He has DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, second round pick Luther Burden, as well as his own target competition at tight end in Cole Kmet. Now, the one thing we always like to mention is the current regime, that matters. The current regime selected Loveland with a top 10 pick, 10th overall. This is Ben Johnson. If you could feel confident in any brand new head coach and their ability to maximize their own players' talent, I think it is Ben Johnson. He's actually comped him a bit to Sam Laporta. Now, I think the short term is going to be a little bit murky. I don't think there's going to be a ton of there isn't going to be a ton of volume for him in the short term. But I think as soon as this next season, he is going to be a focal point of the offense. And I do think that he vastly out-targets Cole Kmet this season in terms of the tight end targets in and of themselves. Caleb Williams was a little bit shaky. He showed some high elite upside with some concerning sack-taking abilities and holding onto the ball for a substantial amount of time. But I do think that Ben Johnson's going to do what he does best, and get Caleb Williams on the move, let him improvise. And I will say, Colson Loveland is the best improvisational tight end in the class. And I think that meshes extremely well with Caleb Williams. And I really think that this is going to be one of the best duos for a long time in terms of quarterback to tight end. And while I didn't comp him to Travis Kelce necessarily, there have been plenty of people in the community that have been comping him in terms of his play style to that of Travis Kelce. If he sees anywhere near that amount of upside, I'd be a little bit surprised. But I really like Loveland, and I think the fit, while it is murky in the short term, is going to be a match made in heaven for the long term.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, they definitely have a crowded wide receiver room right now. And I don't know, there's got to be somebody that's going to be the odd man out. It's probably going to be Burden and Komet, in all honesty. So, yeah, definitely going to have a murky short term. I think once they move on from DJ Moore and Cole Komet, I think he will be definitely a high upside tight end as early as 2026 and probably mid-season this year as well. So, for me at the 110, I'm between two players here, like you said, RJ Harvey, and then a guy that I'm actually going to take here, a quarterback, Jackson Dart, headed into the Giants. There's a lot of reasons why I like Jackson Dart here. I think he should be a first-round rookie pick in pretty much any draft that's a super flex format. Don't expect him to start year one, though. He's not going to. But I thought this was the best position for Jackson Dart just because, one, I don't think he's super pro ready. He's coming from a non-pro style offense. He has some significant pocket issues. He's got some issues in terms of doing too much in the run game where he just tries to run people over. That's going to be fixed. And then some of the decision making can be questionable at times. But he has probably some of the prettiest throws I've ever seen on tape over the past 7 years. He has some of the prettiest throws in the 20 to 40 yard range that are just absolutely insane. And I think with a guy that with that type of talent, going to Brian Daboll, who, let's not forget, he developed Josh Allen, who was way more raw than Jackson Dart was coming out of Ole Miss, and developed him into an MVP caliber quarterback. And I think Jackson Dart in this offense, sitting behind Russell Wilson, who's kind of similar to Jackson Dart in some ways, he gets to sit behind them, learn for a year, and then blossom as the starter in the 2026 season. I think this is a great landing spot for him, and I think he has very high upside, even more upside than Cam Ward in some situations, just because I think he's on the better offense as of right now. So, yeah, Jackson Dart with the 110 for me is kind of a no-brainer in all honesty.
Yeah, I definitely could understand taking him here. I would have probably had him a couple picks from now, but I think it's within a tier that's perfectly acceptable. Like you said, it's great that he does not have to start immediately. I think that would be an absolute disaster. Like you said, he has some mechanical issues, some pocket awareness issues that I think Dable is going to be able to coach out of him. He has an elite stud wide receiver one in Malik Neighbors. Hopefully Theo Johnson returns from injury and is the guy we think that he can be. They have Cam Scadaboo and Tyrone Tracy in the backfield, so he does have some options there as well, and hopefully the run game can look a little bit better. I think if their left tackle can stay healthy, that will help him significantly. And if he landed in just about as good of a landing spot as he possibly could have, in the sense of not having to start right away and having some of these peripheral things going in his favor that could drastically help him out for his career.
Yeah, I don't want to be out of line when I'm saying this, but I see a very similar trajectory to like a Patrick Mahomes type of situation where he gets to sit behind the veteran for a year with a very talented, creative head coach, and he blossoms out of nowhere and nobody saw it coming. I could see a very similar situation happening with Jackson Dart. I think I already know who you're going at the 111, our favorite UCF boy. Am I correct?
He would be correct because he did not go between this pick and the Loveland pick.
That's right.
So yeah, with Harvey, he's I believe 24 years and 4 months old, so he is a little bit older for a running back prospect, but he doesn't have a ton of wear and tear. Now, with running backs, typically, while we would all love for them to be 8-year players at the position, that's pretty rare. I think he's plenty young enough to survive a rookie contract. He lands in Denver. So first of all, he is by far and away the most talented running back in this backfield. Audric Estime is probably his primary competition, which is laughable in my opinion. I think he's going to be used in the passing game, in the running game. And Sean Payton actually said that he understands that he has some issues in pass protection, but he is going to work around that. He specifically mentioned that, I believe it was yesterday. This guy has a ton of upside. We comped him to LaShawn McCoy. He has this incredible ability to set up linebackers inside before bouncing it outside. Now, that's not going to always work at the NFL level, so that may have to be coached out of him, or he potentially just did it because it worked pretty much every time, as we saw. He has make you miss ability in a phone booth. He's incredible. He has the long speed we like as well. I think this guy is going to be in that high end RB2 to potentially low end RB1 in terms of his fantasy production for us. And I think he's going to have some massive spike weeks because he has a big play waiting to happen, albeit he's a little bit older than we would prefer for a running back coming out.
Yeah, and I think with the age, it's not necessarily that big of a deal because we're only looking at 5 to 6 years for our running backs anyways. So, with RJ Harvey's running style, it's not like a Derrick Henry or a Emmitt Smith type deal where, they run a specific type of way that's very sustainable throughout, their time in the NFL. I think RJ Harvey is a guy that once you hit 30, he's probably going to teeter off a good bit. But with the ability, you cannot question it. He's got some of the funnest tape that you can watch out of any of these running backs outside of maybe Genty. He's just got plays over and over on tape, especially with the cut outside ability. I think Sean Payton is definitely going to be utilizing him to the best of his ability. I see a similar type of situation with Henderson where he's going to get all those high-value touches. Underrated as a pass catcher, too, I might add. So definitely like this pick. For me at the 112, we're going to go back-to-back running backs. I think a running back that has that long, sustainable type of running ability and is in a Arthur Smith offense. I'm going with Caleb Johnson here at the 112. Definitely love the landing spot. Thought he fell a little bit farther. It kind of just fell into Pittsburgh's lap in the third round. Thought he was a second-round talent, in my opinion, but yeah, Caleb Johnson, big guy, big physical runner, perfect for the Arthur Smith offense. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Najee Harris, just a little bit better. I think he's going to be way more efficient just because I find him a little bit more athletic, more fast than Najee Harris. But, this guy is going to an offense where all they have is Jaylen Warren, who has proven he cannot stay healthy. He can't. And he's going to probably get 225 to 270 carries, if not more than that, year one, I think. I think he's definitely pro-ready enough to where he can slide into that offense and just start carrying the rock. And even if he is as inefficient as Najee Harris was a high-end RB2 last year. So like that, mid to high-end RB2s and was a consistent 10 to 12-point guy every single week with a touchdown upside here and there. So I think Caleb Johnson can be a similar type of back, if not better. So, yeah, I think that's perfect value for the 212 here.
Yeah, like you said, he's a perfect scheme fit for the wide zone offense that Arthur Smith likes to run. He has good vision. He generally picks the correct hole. While he doesn't have the elite receiving game upside, we don't think because of the lack of lateral agility, I think he has great soft hands. And I think, like you said, he perfectly fits the Najee Harris role. I think he's a better Najee Harris. And, considering you don't have to draft him with a top 3 to 5 pick like he did back in 2021 to get Harris, to be able to get Caleb Johnson at the end of the first round, I think that's a tremendous value.
I'm curious on who you're going to pick.
So this is a bit of a conundrum. There are two players that I'm considering here, being Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka, both in very frustrating short-term situations. I think I'm going to go with the draft capital, though, and go with Emeka Egbuka. So he lands in Tampa Bay. He has his quarterback in Baker Mayfield. We like that. We've seen that this offense under Canales, as well as Liam Cohen in consecutive seasons, has been a high-volume passing offense. Their defense is atrocious. I don't think that changes. Now, in the short term, he is probably going to be third in the pecking order behind both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, but both are aging out, especially Mike Evans. Egbuka is probably going to be more slot specific, but I think he could potentially play some Z. But nonetheless, I really like his fit in this offense in the sense of that he should be the number one target at the very longest 2 years, but potentially be number 2 or number 1 next year, depending on the fall off we experience with Mike Evans and or Chris Godwin. Um, he is one of the best route runners in this class. He has some of the best release packages. He's very good on those crossers. I think he's going to be a staple of this offense for a long time. And I really like, even though it is a little bit muddy in the short term, I love him being connected to Baker Mayfield for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a great quarterback that's pretty reliable in getting his receivers the ball. I mean, Mike Evans and Godwin were both very fantasy relevant until both of them got hurt, unfortunately. So, yeah, Baker Mayfield, I have no questions about. The offense, I have no questions about. They have a good run game. They can stay competitive, throughout games just because they're in a lot of high-scoring games. So, yeah, Emeka Egbuka, he starts in the slot right away. RIP Jalen McMillan for sure. We were telling you guys all offseason to sell him while you could. Can you believe that guy was going for a mid-second round pick in rookie drafts as early as just, 2 or 3 months ago? That's insane. So, Emeka Egbuka, very talented. I think he's going to be a super good PPR kind of scam artist type of receiver with the floor of like a Wan'Dale Robinson and with the ceiling of like a JSN. So, love that for Emeka Egbuka. So you're going to end up with Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka here because I'm going with my wide receiver 3 and Jack Besh. So, yes, I have him actually ranked over Egbuka just because of the short-term upside, right? So I do think Egbuka is the more talented player, but I love my rookies to have great short-term outlooks because I can always flip them after the first season and get more out of them and then end up, building my team up pretty much infinitely using that type of strategy. So the way I usually play Dynasty, I'm looking for the people with better short-term outlooks just because that's a part of my strategy. So with Jack Besh, I mean, he's going to an offense that only is got Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. That's it. I do think they lean on the run game more, but they were severely lacking an X receiver. Geno Smith famously made DK Metcalf pretty relevant while he was in Seattle. And with Jack Besh, I think he can play anywhere on the field. I think he's got some of the best release packages. He can catch any ball that comes to him. I thought he had great ball skills. So, yeah, I love the talent that is Jack Besh. I like it more than Luther Burden just because of how crowded that offense is for, at least the next couple years. So, yeah, I'm picking Jack Besh over here. I get some hate for that, but, I mean, I got to go with my guy while he's sitting right there in my face at the 202.
Yeah, and I don't disagree at all. I guess it depends on your method or the thought process behind this. If you're looking to flip your guys, it absolutely makes sense. I'm obviously very high on Best, just like you are. Um, yeah, I think in a best case scenario, he's the number 2 option in this offense. But to be fair, the defense is pretty bad, so they're probably going to throw the ball quite a bit, despite their probable desire to run with Ashton Genty quite a bit, which will still happen. But I think you'll see plenty of volume.
Absolutely. All right, at the 203.
We're going with Burden.
Yeah, figured as much. Great pick here, great value. This is actually before we started recording. I told you that there's a guy that you were going to pick in the 203 to 206 range that I'm actually not touching until the 212, late second.
Yeah, so with Luther Burden, I think he's a little bit more slot specific, just like with Emeka Egbuka, but he's fantastic. Just like I said with Colson Loveland, this regime, being Ben Johnson's regime, specifically drafted Luther Burden. Now, I just saw a highlight from yesterday where he caught a 60-yard bomb, and he also has looked incredibly quick in and out of his cuts. I think he's going to receive the desired slot role in this offense. Now, I don't think the offense is going to be a cut and paste from Detroit to Chicago, but I think he's going to immediately start in the slot. I think he's going to be fed the ball in space. I think the short-term upside is a little bit murky, but I think if you're just willing to hold 1 year, I think he's going to be fantastic. I think they get rid of DJ Moore, but I definitely understand trying to go with somebody that gets more immediate short-term production. With somebody now, the strategy you mentioned with Besh will work on more inexperienced players or players that which is a lot of players, to be fair. Personally, like if I'm drafting a Emeka Egbuka or Burden, I won't be selling for somebody that produced more immediately if they're less talented. But that is a viable strategy that will work for plenty of you and is a very intelligent strategy if you know you can get it done. With Burden, though, I think in the short term, like I said, He's going to be a little bit limited from a target volume perspective, but this regime liked him. He's connected to Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, and I think he has elite upside in the future when he sees a little bit more of his target competition being Cole Kmet and DJ Moore removed from the team, presumably as soon as this next season.
So with Burden, I mean, how can you not look at that guy's film and be like, this is an overall offensive weapon? That's exactly what Ben Johnson saw on tape. Absolutely, that's what he saw. So I'm going to expect a lot of design touches for him, a lot of creative play calls that involve him getting the ball. So Ben Johnson's probably the most creative play caller in the NFL right now. And yeah, I think Burden's going to get utilized a lot in space, like you said, just because his yak ability is off the charts. And I do think him and DJ Moore are kind of similar type of players. So I do think they're going to keep Burden for the long term. Reason why he's slipping down my board just a little bit, and it's just like a sixth sense that I have with him. He was, I think both of us, he was our wide receiver 3 pre-draft, I believe, right? Behind Travis and Tet, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Super talented, but I keep getting these just Kadarius Toney vibes from Luther Burden because he has a whole bunch of issues, on the field whenever he gets trash talked by corners. He'll just crash out on the field. I hope that Ben Johnson can keep them under control. He kind of kept Jameson Williams under control, so that is a good sign. But, I just hope Burden doesn't, crash out similarly to how Kadarius Toney was. He doesn't have the injury concerns or the drop issues that Kadarius Toney has, so that is good. But I just have a weird feeling about Luther Burden for some reason where I'm not really wanting to touch him till like the 208 sometimes in my drafts. Plus, like you said, the short-term outlook's not great for him. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead at the 204. I got a few options here. A guy that we both like a ton. I've already taken 2 quarterbacks. Do I go for the third? Probably not. I'm going to go ahead. I will say, in your rookie drafts, just because me and you are drafting in this league, I know I can't get him later than this, and I have to grab him now, or he's going to be off the board fairly soon. Got to type his name in because he's so down the board on ADP. You can get Kyle Williams. I'm getting him at the 204 here. I've done probably 8 rookie drafts in the past month. He's consistently going in the mid to late 3rd round, if not even the 4th round in a lot of these rookie drafts. People don't know who he is. We've been preaching about Kyle Williams all offseason. Great long speed. Didn't underperform at the combine. Killed it at the combine. Has great release packages. Has great yak ability too. Played in a bad offense as well. So it's just like, love Kyle Williams. He's going to the New England Patriots linked to a fantastic quarterback that does not fear to throw the ball downfield. He will throw it to Kyle Williams if he's open downfield. I think Kyle Williams could emerge in 2026 as their dominant wide receiver 1 once Stephon Diggs is gone. So love this for Kyle Williams. Like I said, you can probably get him a little bit later than this, but with you here, I knew you had your fingers on him fairly soon, so I had to grab him at the 204 here.
He would have gone within the next 4 picks, technically the next 2 picks in which I was picking. So your intuition served you correctly. Yeah. By the time you're watching this video, I will have already released my Kyle Williams deep dive with some all 22 footage. I love this guy just like Bobby. He's incredible with the ball in his hands. He has incredible release packages. We saw on film where 4 seconds into a play, a run play, mind you, the cornerback had no idea it was a run because they were terrified of getting beat deep by this guy. He breaks tackles the majority of the time. The ball is in his hands. He turns upfield immediately. He has a 64% contested catch rate, which is shocking considering he does have concerns with focus drops. But this guy walks into a room with a 32-year-old post-ACL tear Stephon Diggs is the wide receiver 1. The competition, to be frank with you, is laughable. He has, in our opinion at least, a very good high-upside quarterback in Drake May. Say what you want about McDaniels as a head coach, but as an offensive coordinator, I do like him. And I think that this is a match made in heaven, rather. And I think you're going to see immediate results. And this is going to be one of those guys, Bobby, that you're going to be able to flip for a huge profit, in my opinion. I think that's going to happen.
I think he's one of the guys I'm keeping. I mean, I see a very similar upside to like BTJ or someone like that can really just bust out year one. And with the talent that I saw on film, like you said, I mean, he's got corners, mind you, not at the highest levels of competition, but the corners out there are just like completely just lost on where he is just due to the release packages. He can make people look absolutely dumb. So, yeah. So, I think I know who you're picking at the 205. So, he's fell far enough. Are you going receiver here?
I am, and I think that depends on it. I'm going to go with Matthew Golden.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought you were going.
This is more so the process pick rather than I'm just excited. I think we both agree that there's definitely things to like about Golden. It's just we think that he's been hyped up a little bit more than he should have been. The 49 speed does not show up on the film. He runs, in my opinion, in real life, probably about high 4.3s, which is still plenty fast. He's not particularly great after the catch. He's fine. He walks into a room with a whole bunch of wide receiver 2s. I think he's more of a high-end wide receiver 2 ceiling than a wide receiver 1 ceiling. But I do think he's probably the most talented wide receiver. Arguably, you could argue Jaden Reed. Yeah. I think you could argue Jaden Reed. I think Golden's a little bit less limited than Reed is. I don't like the landing spot with Jordan Love. I don't think he's very talented personally. I know he dealt with injury, but his accuracy grades were horrible. You're talking 25th or worse in every conceivable accuracy grade. I think he steps in as the high-end wide receiver 2. I don't know that there is a wide receiver 1 in the system, but the worry I do have with him is despite the first-round draft capital, which is the reason for me selecting him here, I do worry that he is more of a deep threat in this offense than a la Christian Watson than a do-it-all wide receiver 1. So I would be cautious with people that just because he gets the first-round draft capital, there is a potential for him to have poor quarterback play, not see the target volume he like, and not be used in a way that is advantageous to him and producing fantasy points.
Yeah, and like you said, I'm not in love with Jordan Love by any means. You know, he hasn't been able to produce a top wide receiver 1 since his inception into the offense a couple of years ago. And it's not for a lack of having talent. I think Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, and Jaden Reed are all pretty solid wide receivers that could be fairly productive in the NFL, but none of them are just because they spread the ball around way too much. And Jordan Love, like you said, is not all that accurate. So, yeah, I think with Matthew Golden landing here, I don't think you can put him in the slot where I'd like him most just because Jaden Reed exists, and he's kind of their slot guy. So I think, like you said, Christian Watson has proven he can't stay healthy over the course of a season, and who knows what his explosiveness looks like after, back-to-back big-time injuries and the hamstring issue. So, yeah, Golden's probably going to be their vertical X, which if I had to pick my favorite fantasy target to play anywhere on the field, it would probably go from slot to Z to X just because X receivers are so inconsistent in terms of their target usage. So unless you're like AJ Brown or Nico Collins, but they're very few and far between. So yeah, I actually have Golden a little bit lower than this. I have him at like the 209-ish, somewhere in there, just because I hate the landing spot. And, people really don't understand that just because they see the first round grade. I'm off from him. Unless he's there at the late second, I'm passing on him. All right.
I would be trading out of this pick personally.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, there's a few options here. I think I go quarterback here though, and obviously, you got guys like Tyler Shuck, who probably will start the majority of the year this coming season, but I am not very fond of him as a high upside quarterback. I'm actually going to go Jalen Milroe here. Probably a little early for Jalen Milroe. I actually drafted him with the 307, I believe, in my main Dynasty league. So you can definitely get him later than this. But in terms of my rankings, I have him this high just because If he hits, guys, and he lands in a situation where he doesn't have to start right away, if he can put together his passing mechanics and get his accuracy looking right, which from what I'm hearing in Seahawks rookie minicamp, he's staying late every day. He's working on his mechanics, working on his passing. And honestly, guys, if Saban stayed there for his final season at Alabama, I think he's a first-round pick. I don't think he understood the offense all that well, the new offense, right? And he kind of struggled in that a little bit. But if you look at his 2023 tape, he's phenomenal. So he still had 20 rushing touchdowns last year. He's the fastest quarterback I've ever seen on tape. That's Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick, Anthony Richardson, all those freaks. He's faster than all of them that I've seen. He actually ran like a 4.36 at an Alabama Pro Day, something like that, which is insane. Fastest quarterback time ever. So, yeah, love this for him. Don't expect him to start this year. He could end up being like a Malik Willis. That's like his bad outlook. And then his good outlook is literally on par with like a Lamar Jackson league-winning quarterback. So, yeah, I think you can get him in the third, but my rankings have him right here and in the mid-second.
Yeah, I like that he doesn't have to start right away. He is going to be connected to JSN, who can make any quarterback right. They also drafted tight end. They have Kenneth Walker for now, at least, and Zach Charbonnet, so they definitely should have a good running game. I like the hire of Kubiak to be their offensive coordinator. He specializes in the run game and the deep ball. Both things that Jalen Milroe specializes in the sense of, at least with Milroe, the arm talent to get the deep ball off. So yeah, there's a lot of upside, and just like with Jackson Dart, thank goodness he doesn't have to start right away.
Absolutely. All right, you're on the clock at the 207. There's a lot of interesting picks here.
I've been trying to think. It's between a running back and a wide receiver. I don't like the wide receiver very much, so I'm going to go with the running back. I am going to go with a running back named Cam Skattebo, who this is getting to the point in this draft where it's a little bit murky. Like with Milroe, we don't know that he's good. We don't know when he sees the field. With Cam Skattebo, I think we know that he's probably decent, but it's fourth-round draft capital. The offense probably isn't the best, if we're being honest here. So it is a little bit risky, but I think that he profiles as a potential three-down back. He's more than adequate in the receiving game. He has a massive BMI. He is not going to get many long touchdowns. I doubt he has a career-long run of over 50 yards, if I'm being honest. But he is an absolute tank. He lands in this Daboll offense where his only competition is Tyrone Tracy, who we preached for months, was not safe, despite people wish casting him to be the RB1 long-term. I don't think that's the case. I think Skattebo takes over. I think it's somewhat of a committee, but honestly, do we know that Skattebo isn't better as a receiver than Tyrone Tracy out of the backfield? So I think that at this point, you just go with your guy in this range of the draft, and I think that Skattebo could see a good bit of volume, and I don't think that he can be phased out of the game if they get down in terms of the score.
Yes, and Skattebo is, like you said, very physical guy. I think he's going to be the three-down back there. I think Tyrone Tracy is going to be the change of pace guy, I think. Yeah, he may be the three-down back, but like Skattebo literally led all running backs last year in receiving yards. Caught a lot of passes. So Skattebo can definitely catch the ball out of the backfield. I think he's very limited in terms of athleticism, long speed, things like that, but he's super hard to tackle. Doesn't really have much in terms of agility, even though I saw him actually take some reps at rookie minicamp for the Giants, and he actually looked pretty agile, weirdly enough. Didn't really do that at Arizona State all that often. He was just running through guys. So good to see him doing that for sure. So, yeah, love the pick for Cam Skattebo here at the 207. I would think he probably goes slightly earlier than that just because people are really high on him because they saw the Texas playoff game where he just cooked them. Very good workhorse running back here. That was probably who I was taking at the 208. Thanks, but I'll probably grab a guy who. There's a lot of
quarterback.
I don't think I'm taking four quarterbacks in a row here. Tyler Shuck is definitely a second round pick in a lot of rookie drafts. Like I said, I'm not super high on him though.
Me neither.
Trey Harris was the other guy you were talking about, huh? Or Higgins?
No.
Higgins?
Yes. As much as I don't want to take that pick,
Man, in the late second, you're basically trying to throw it at upside. And, I don't know if there's another player in this class that has much more upside than Harold Fannin Jr. I'm going to go with Harold Fannin Jr. here just because David Njoku is a free agent after this year. They drafted him fairly high in the third round. I think Harold Fannin can be an absolute stud after the catch. That's one thing. I think Cleveland is very notorious for using their tight ends heavily, and I kind of see a little bit of resemblance to David Njoku, Evan Ingram type of David Njoku type of player. I think Njoku's probably going to get hurt like he always does, and Harold Fannin's going to come in and show people why he led the country last year in catches and yards. Regardless of whether you're a wide receiver or a tight end, he was cooking people in the MAC last year. Yes, low level of competition, but when he played ranked competition against Penn State, I think he went for like 180 yards and a touchdown versus them. So Harold Fannin's the real deal, guys. If you can get him in the late second, early third of your rookie drafts, I think that's pretty good, especially if you are having a need at the tight end position. So love this. Great value here for Harold Fannin here for me, I think.
Yeah, great pick. You're going to force me once again to pick somebody I don't actually want to take, but it's just a process pick. We're going to go with Jaden Higgins here. Mm-hmm. I think one reason why I am still willing now, if it had been the worst possible outcome, I would just not be drafting him, and I don't care what people think. I think I still don't care what people think, or I'd be drafting him much earlier than this. With Jaden Higgins, I do like at the very least that he landed with the Texans where he does not have to be the X. Now, I understand that everybody wants him to be his teammate, Nico Collins. I don't care that he ran a 4.48. I don't care that he can jump high. He is not Nico Collins. He is not that guy after the catch. He does not play on the field with 4.47 speed. He has vice grip hands, though, and he has little short bursts after the catch of speed. Now, he's also horrible against press coverage. I'm talking, I believe Matt Harmon said he was 37th percentile against press, man. So please, guys, I understand you want him to be this guy that he's not. He is not that guy. But I do think that he can eat in the slot. Now, this will vary. Whether or not he is successful will vary as to whether Jalen Noel or Higgins is the slot. I think that they're going to interchangeably use them to a degree, but I do think that they are going to use Higgins in the slot a good bit. And I do think that against off coverage, he can be a Michael Pittman Jr. type of target. And I do think that with CJ Stroud, he is going to be able to get the ball to him. And I think that, with the departure of Bobby Slowick, I think better things are in store for this offense. I think that he's going to get the ball in those little PPR scam routes that we like for production at the very least. And I don't mean it as though I don't like him, because I hope he succeeds. I just think that this was one of the best landing spots for him, and that he does not have to A, be a wide receiver one, or B, be a vertical X.
Yeah, Jaden Higgins is overall pretty solid pick, in all honesty. I think the value in terms of the draft capital is pretty solid, but like you said, I was initially in love with the pick when they picked him because I thought he'd play in the slot. Then they picked Jalen Noel around later, and then I was like, oh, he's playing outside. Okay, great. I think he's going to be one of the most disappointing wide receivers in this draft in terms of where they were drafted. So, yeah, I mean, if you're wanting to take upside just in terms of team investment, I think the late second's where you should probably pick him. Anything earlier than that, I'm probably passing. So, all right, at the 210, another guy that probably feels like a reach, but in terms of overall value and how I feel he's going to stack up after his rookie season and overall over the next few years, I'm going with Pat Bryant here. So a lot of things I love about Pat Bryant. One, the size. He's like 6'2", 6'3", 215. Like, love the size. I love the long speed. I love the yak ability. I love the jump ball ability. I also love the landing spot. Bo Nix led all rookie quarterbacks last year in passing yards, and that was a stacked quarterback class last year. So, and he didn't really have that much to work with. Marvin Mims looked good down the stretch, right? Cortland Sutton's obviously good. And I do think they drafted Pat Bryant to eventually take over for Cortland Sutton. But in the meantime, he's going to start in the slot over Devon Vele, who is 38 years old as a rookie. So realistically, he is 28. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. So Pat Bryant's going to slot right into the slot, I believe. I think you'll play him outside a little bit in certain packages where Mims isn't on the field. Man, there's so much to like with him. He was on a horrendously bad Illinois team where he still put up solid numbers. I'm getting this guy in like the 4th round of rookie drafts. Nobody knows who this guy is. If you're not watching film and you're not watching the draft, if your league mates are not doing that, Pat Bryant is like at the very bottom of the ADP, even though he was a 3rd round pick. 3rd round pick, and like you said earlier, he was comped. Sean Payton said he reminded him a lot of Michael Thomas. And what did he do in 2019 with Michael Thomas? He only made Michael Thomas break the single season receptions record, and he was a wide receiver 1. So the wide receiver 1. So love this pick at the 210. I think you can get him later. I wouldn't take a chance on him falling past the 306 though.
Yeah, I love Pat Bryant. Fantastic pick. I really wish I wouldn't have been. I wasn't really forced to, but if it was my draft, I would have traded down if I could to get Pat Bryant instead of taking Jaden Higgins. But we have to pick where we have to pick. I love this guy. I think he's the long-term, and by long-term, I mean next season, Cortland Sutton replacement. Like you said, Devon Vele, the Mormon missionary, he is going to be kicked out of the starting lineup. I think you're right. And Pat Bryant starts in the slot. He's great after the catch, physical. He's an absolute beast with long strides. He can stack vertically. This guy has the tools to theoretically be a wide receiver 1 on a team.
Absolutely. And at the 211, you were saying that there might be a guy here that you really wanted. So who do you got at the 211?
And that would be Mr. Bashal Tootin.
Yep, makes sense.
Now, this is another guy where it's not guaranteed that he sees playing time. This is an upside pick. One thing I've mentioned time and time again in this mock draft is the current regime. So, who's ahead of him on the depth chart? Players that the current regime, being Liam Cohen, did not select. Travis Etienne is the presumed consensus RB1 in this offense. That was 2 regimes ago. He's incredibly inefficient. He's regressed every year in efficiency since he missed his rookie season. Then he came on as a second-year player, was reasonably efficient, didn't get that many touchdowns. Then in his 3rd season, he had a ton of touchdowns, was incredibly inefficient. And then this past season, he was terrible while dealing with injury. Then you have Tank Bigsby, who is a gap runner. I really don't think he's a good fit for this Liam Cohen scheme. He doesn't have any receiving ability. I think that Tootin is an incredible outside zone runner. I think that Liam Cohen is intelligent, knows how to utilize the strengths of his players. I think we see a good bit of Tootin on the field as a rookie, and I think he takes over this backfield as soon as this next season, if not before. He is an elite athlete. He has over a 30 BMI despite running a 4.32. His athleticism in general is out of this world. He has tremendous receiving ability despite the stats not looking very good, specifically in this final year of collegiate production. I think this guy is going to crush for us as soon as he gets opportunity. And I think he is going to be one of the biggest hits in this class in terms of value at their current position in ADP.
Yeah, I mean, for Tootin, I think if he's able to get solid holes, he will explode and take them for touchdowns. I'm talking like Devon A-Chain type of just explosiveness. He has some ball security issues, right, that could take him off the field sooner rather than later if he doesn't get that cleaned up. In terms of overall one-cut home run potential, he is probably better than any back in this entire class. I mean, he is an absolute speed freak once he gets out in space. So solid value overall. And like you said, the regime thing makes a ton of sense. They take a swing on this guy and, they don't want to look wrong, right? So they're probably going to give him more opportunity, even if he may not be the most talented back, which he's up there in terms of talent on that backfield. So at the 212, I said it earlier, I guess I'm going to be the QB guru this mock draft. I'm going to take Tyler Shuck. I will say there is a lot of value in getting a starting quarterback regardless of how bad they are. I don't even want to tell you what I saw Mason Rudolph getting traded for mid-season last year because he was starting and actually putting up 15, 20-point games with the Titans. Ridiculous trades because people were so hungry for a quarterback. Tyler Shuck is around that Case Keenum, Mason Rudolph type of player, but I do think he starts right away. I don't think they're going to give Spencer Rattler, a guy that they got day 3 the previous year, over a guy that they picked fairly early in the second round. That would make everyone in that organization look very stupid. He's 6'5", he's got the solid, prototypical size. People say he's got a cannon arm. I didn't really necessarily see that because he didn't throw the ball down the field. He threw it in the short and the intermediate areas, and I thought he was kind of like a check down merchant in a lot of situations. But I will say he doesn't put the ball into harm's way. I think he's a low floor or fairly safe floor, very severely limited high upside quarterback. Like, I don't think he's high upside at all. I think his ceiling is basically the same as his floor. So expect 20 of 31, 200 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, something like that. So on average, probably. I don't think he's very good, but he will be starting. And if the second he puts up a 20-plus point game, I'm going to be flipping him for a second-round pick or a player of that same value.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. As we discussed before this, and you're in the same league, obviously you saw, I traded JT Sanders and Shuck for Ferguson and a second-round pick. Then I traded Ferguson, the tight end for the Rams, by the way, for a second-round pick. Like you said, if you can sell him for that, I would immediately. I don't see the upside either. It's a terrible organization. The offensive line is regressing. The receiving core is whatever remaining intellectual capacity remains in Chris Olave or bust, in my opinion. And obviously Alvin Kamara is good too, but not a good situation. I would be selling if you can for a second. And yeah, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as you can flip your players for more than what you perceive them to be worth in the long term, do it immediately. Like, if you have a gut feeling about some of your players, just, their long-term outlooks, like if you had Chase Brown or Tyron Tracy last year and you knew that they weren't going to be long-term backs, sell them. And your team will be better for it in the future, even if you have a need. Unless you think that those players are going to be the difference between winning you a championship and not, sell them while the value's high. You got to treat this as kind of like a stock market type of deal sometimes. So, but yeah, all in all, I think this mock draft went pretty well. Obviously, probably reached in a few points, but I'm only going off my rankings. So, and trying to snipe you from a few players that I knew you were going to pick, like Kyle Williams. So yeah, for sure.
You did that quite successfully over and over again. I made several picks that were process picks and not ideal. Players like Matthew Golden, Jaden Higgins, I would personally not have drafted myself. If this was a real rookie draft, I would have traded out of those picks for a profit and let somebody else draft those players, but we don't do trades in this, so
yep.
Is what it is. Why don't we do one player each that we would have selected immediately after this? One player I would have selected in probably the next pick would be Jalen Royals. I love the fit in Kansas City. I think he could be the short-term and potentially, if he plays well enough, Rashee Rice replacement due to his potential injury concerns / potential suspension. He's incredible. I think he can directly fill that role, and I think that even though he slid a little bit into the 4th round, it's good enough draft capital, and he's in a good enough situation with Andy Reid, who's potentially one of the best play callers we've ever seen, to produce very good short-term upside as a massive sleeper.
Yeah, that would have been my pick as well. He was my best player available at this point in time. I love that for, especially in the early 3rd round. I think that's great value. Outside of that, I mean, my next guy up is Trey Harris. I don't necessarily love the fit. I don't love, where he's going to fit in terms of they're a run-heavy offense. He's playing the vertical X. Probably isn't the wide receiver one unless Ladd gets hurt, which is likely, I will say. If you have Ladd McConkey, I would probably sell now if you can. But with Trey Harris, I think he's going to be a very frustrating asset. He's going to be kind of similar to how Jamison Williams is. That's at his peak, like where you have 3 or 4 catches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then the next week he has 1 for 24. Like, that's the type of player that I perceive Trey Harris to be. But I will say he kind of surprised me at times with his jump ball ability. And Justin Herbert is a very solid quarterback. So I think Trey Harris overall is probably my next best player available at this point.
Yep. Yeah. So where do you guys agree? Where do you disagree? Do you think we reached for some players? I think Bobby did what I would have preferred to do, in that you just take your guys where your personal favorites are. I chose some guys just because we weren't trading out that I think were the correct process, even though I'm a little bit lower on them. But I'm curious what y'all think. I think one thing Bobby made a point of doing is getting your quarterbacks, because even though it is like, a community, the community perceives this as a weaker quarterback class, some of these guys have real upside and they will be starting quarterbacks. And no matter what you think about them, if you're in a 12-team format like we did, there is value to be gained from future trades.
Absolutely, and you never know when a story comes out about Jalen Milroe, midway through the season that, he's looking really good, blah, 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 and then you can flip him for, an early second-round pick or a player that's worth something like that, right? So quarterbacks are always just elite in terms of value, especially once they start generating some hype. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so feel free to like and subscribe. Please share this. Please check out Bobby's channel, Bobby's Big Board. I would greatly appreciate that. We plan to, and we're going to continue to collaborate in the future. It's going to be a fun NFL season. And yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how some of these mock drafts that we're doing end up looking after this season.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, we should do like a reaction to this next offseason and see how wrong we were. That would be a decent idea.
For sure.
But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and we're looking forward to do more collaborative content. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. See you guys.